This information you are about to hear and perhaps view, these are not necessarily the thoughts or the ideas of Gary C.Clement or the Gary Clement Radio Show podcast. We are in no way, shape, or form affiliated with the parties this story is about or was interviewed for. Parts of this content may not be owned by or the property of the Gary Clement Radio Show podcast, G2 Network Media, or any other company we are affiliated with, and this information is strictly the opinion of those being interviewed. This content is for information purposes only, and although we may make reference to various news stories, we share our own independent beliefs about the content and provide our own opinions. Please enjoy the information. Welcome to this edition of Hard News, hosted by Gary C.Clement. Just when will it all end? Another innocent person faces the consequences of another man's pain, and in many cases his fear. Gun violence should not be the only solution. In the wake of this gun violence epidemic in America, we've decided to release a series of exclusive episodes that allow us to interview guests about guns and violence in our communities. Regardless of your skin color, financial status, zip code, or your religious beliefs, gun violence is all around us. Not all of us share these views or have these strong opinions where conversations about guns, drugs, our youth, and their shortcomings are seen in a positive light. And therefore, it's important to talk about truth, about the good and the bad of our society. We welcome your thoughts and your concerns. It seems that every day we turn on the television, check our smartphones, there's a news that another black man has been shot from a traffic stop. More kids were shot inside of a school, not to mention gang violence and drug use has taken over many of our communities. In short, no one has all the answers. No one man can solve the many problems and challenges we face in today's society. But one place we can start is with the simple yet complex issue of gun control in our communities. On today's episode, our topic of discussion is gun control in our communities. And as our guest, we have Mr. Walter Jackson, chairman of the Durham Committee for the Affairs of Black People, as well as Dr. Wanda Boone, executive director of TRI, which stands for Together for Resilient Youth, and she's also the founder of the Pinnacle Development Center. How are you all?
Great.
Doing well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Great. Okay. So first of all, Mr. Jackson, you recently organized an event at the Ebenezer Missionary Baptist Church to address some of the issues of gun violence in our communities. Please share with us some of your thoughts in regards to putting that event together, please.
I'd be glad to, and thank you for inviting us to talk about this, Mr. Clement. As chair of the Durham Committee on the Affairs of Black People, I have a responsibility, and the committee has a responsibility to look at the range of issues affecting Black life in Durham County and to look for ways to improve lives for Black citizens and residents of Durham. We look at things like education and housing and health and safety and civic affairs, but there is no issue more important or pressing in my mind right now than the issue of the gun violence that is taking so many lives, both in Durham and across the country. And one could easily say, well, this is a national problem. It's not just restricted to Durham, and I certainly agree with that. But our responsibility is to deal with these issues in Durham. So I organized an effort for the Durham Committee to get involved and take a forthright stand to say, this has got to stop. And that's what we are trying to do. And I'm delighted that we have as our first vice chair, Mr. Larry Hall, former Secretary of Veterans Affairs for the state of North Carolina and former state representative. And as the head of our Health and Safety Committee, as you already introduced her, Dr. Wanda Boone, whose efforts go to improving lives and safety in so very, very many areas. But what we're trying to do is pull all of this together to really focus on this problem of gun violence.
I see. Okay. Now, this event that you actually had, I think was last week, I believe, Tuesday or Thursday night. How many people actually participated, and, what was the outcome of that meeting exactly?
I didn't count noses, so to speak. The news media reported that there were over 100 people. I don't know how many more than 100, but it certainly was a very good representative showing in my mind of people who are concerned about this issue in our community. And in terms of results, the result in my mind was that we certainly got an understanding that there is a broad base of concern and support for working together in Durham to try to eliminate or reduce this problem. The specific steps that are to come forth, we haven't developed yet, but the first thing is to develop this coalition of the willing, and we think we've laid the basis for doing that.
I see. Okay. Now, Dr. Boone, just tell us a little bit about your involvement with this project as well as working with, young people in that community and how all this plays into, like you said, I guess, just trying to just eradicate this problem of gun violence in the communities, please.
Mhm. Thanks so much for the opportunity to speak on this subject. And I thank Mr. Walter Jackson and Larry Hall for their leadership as well. One of the things that I hear people saying is, oh, we've been addressing this problem for so long and nothing has changed. And I beg to differ because I would say if we didn't have all of those that are working on the issue, how much worse could it be? We don't want to imagine that. So, one of the things I want to just uplift in terms of the meeting at Ebenezer is that people spoke their minds and spoke their hearts and talked about how their position is to be out in the streets, and others that have youth programs and others that are doing things even differently than those. And one way is not better than another way, but all ways are needed. When I think about and talk to young people, as I have for many, many, many years, so that now some of those young people are adults with families, what I hear is a sense of hopelessness, stress, anxiety, despair. And I'm not saying that that is a causal factor in terms of individuals that are carrying guns or using guns or shooting or participating in other forms of violence, but I will say that it can't help. So we need to take a look at how our young people are feeling, either out of anger, why are they angry? If they're depressed after what was experienced with COVID, why are they depressed and what can we do about that? So, this challenge has many layers, personal, interrelational, community, and societal norms. And each of those areas need people that have passion in order to address it. So those are some of the ways that we are helping in terms of having young people with voices, parents having voices, community members having and sharing voices, and then hearing from them in terms of what they feel the solutions are.
How long have these gatherings or whatnot in regards to gun violence been, taking place at Ebenezer exactly, please?
The one that you specifically referenced at Ebenezer last week was the first of its kind, and we're not sure whether or not future sessions of this nature will be at Ebenezer or not. But what we are committed to doing is advancing this effort on a long-term basis simply because there's just far too much at stake. And again, as Dr. Boone has said, yes, there are a lot of organizations working on the problem, but one of the challenges will be to bring a greater coherence of those groups together and focus efforts more and show more unity as we go about it.
I see. Okay, okay. Now, one idea actually that I had, and I'm probably still going to do it, is try to not only get, like I said, people like yourself or whatnot on a call like this, but also get maybe the sheriff department as well as a victim or a family or whatnot representative to speak out in regards to their family having a actual child or someone that was shot or it was a victim and stuff of one of these crimes, and then to also have a gun manufacturer or whatnot to speak their part or whatnot with this too. When it comes down to responsibility in these kinds of situations, I guess we can't blame anybody. What are you all's thoughts and stuff in regards to that information, please?
Well, I want to beg to differ with your we can't blame anybody. We certainly can blame someone, and we can start with ourselves. We are all involved, in my mind, to a degree, in the fault and responsibility for this situation. This isn't something new, obviously. The roots of it are not only in the foundation of this country, but in humankind at large. So we've got to, we've really got to look long and hard at causes and solutions. I'm sure the sheriff's office will be happy to join with you in a conversation, and they were part. Sheriff Clarence Burkhead of Durham County was part of the conversation at Ebenezer. It will not at all be hard for you to find victims and past offenders because they are everywhere in this community. Your chances of getting a gun manufacturer to sit down and talk reasonably about the subject might not be as good, but for a number of reasons, to include obviously they have the economic incentive to be defensive of their posture. But again, this is a far, broad, and wide problem for all society.
Yes, sir. Okay.
One thing,
Go ahead.
one thing that I would say is um, that there were several prevention advances in terms of the causes of death. So, for example, when people were riding around without seatbelts and death rates among individuals that were involved in car crashes, it was found that, well, if they wore their seatbelt, then they could be a little safer. When it comes to child seats in cars, baby seats in cars. So we can find some solutions that go beyond what we think. So what I mean by that is that if there are guns in a home, first of all, if there is a parent or an adult that has, a right to possess a gun and a permit to do so, then it's their responsibility to make sure that that weapon is locked and secured and out of the way of young people. So we need to identify parents personally, individuals personally, are there guns in my home? Does a young person have access to a gun that is in my home? Well, I don't want to search their room. It's their belongings. No, if they're in your house, then, you have the responsibility to make sure that they're safe. So I would think that that would be a reasonable place to start. If there is a gun in the home, make sure that it is secured properly and out of the hands of any young person that is in the home. Gun locks can be uh, gotten from the health department free of charge. So that's the first thing, access and the ability to use a gun. And will that solve the problem? No. But it may prevent some situations that arise in terms of a young person with a gun um, doing damage to themselves or others.
Right. Okay.
And
Okay.
I want to say amen to all that Dr. Boone just said.
Mhm.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. No problem. Okay. So when it comes down to this thing, would you say then that our politicians are not doing everything that they can do to help alleviate some of these problems, or who should be?
I don't want, I don't have any reservations about jumping in before you finish the question to say that based on the fact that you say they're not doing all that they could, absolutely they are not. But there are a lot of reasons why they are not. They, as a whole, our elected officials in the land, starting with the U.S. Congress, there are a lot of reasons why they don't do all that they can, to include the very powerful interests that are pushing and pulling them to keep them from doing more.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I understand. I got you. Okay. So as far as just to have another get together in regards to a gun violence style protest or event, what would you do differently? What do you all want to do that you have yet to do?
Well, there are so many people that are interested in this topic, more so than I've ever seen come together before. So there are organizations that I believe we are all in sync with. So it's not that one organization is doing this and other organizations can't join in because they're of another organization. So I would say that TRI had an event on March 7th that had to do with young people, parents, and individuals around, first of all, what happened with uh, the youth at Hillside who lost his life. And that was also prompted by the state of urgency play that was done at Hillside. So, actually we started work then, not that it was a first and only, but we started work then. And then there are several events that are being planned as roundtables with youth that are happening April 25th and May 6th that look like this. Both of them look like this. And what I mean by this is that there will be young people, teenagers at tables with an adult that they recommend seated at the table with them, maybe 10 tables of youth and adults there. And then youth are going to talk about their perception, what they feel, what they see, what they've heard, and what their solutions are, how disenchanted they are with adults, and perhaps how adults respond or don't respond to them. And the trusted adult at the table will listen, listen, and not give their opinion. And so there are several of those that are happening in different spaces, which I think is, really important. The other is conversations with parents so that parents understand how to respond to the challenges and depression and stress that their children are going through, which may be a causal effect in terms of a child harming themselves or others. So there are lots of these events going on, and I know and believe that the Durham Committee on the Affairs of Black People, that to me are expert, and NAACP are expert in bringing people together en masse in order to continue these conversations that, when mobilized, really result in action.
Yeah, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Hard News hosted by Gary C.Clement. Hard News is created, written, and produced by Gary C.Clement for G2 Network Media. This production, like all our productions, are produced in-house, and our guest comments are not solely our thoughts or views, but strictly their opinions. We are not responsible for their interpretations of the questions we ask and reserve the right to express our thoughts and opinions separately, with the overall objective to educate, inspire, and promote the positive and intriguing thoughts and news. If you have any news ideas, news stories that you want us to consider for discussion, please send them to gccpresents@yahoo.com. That's G as in Gary, C as in Charles, C as in Charles, presents@yahoo.com. This has been a G2 Network Media Production, copyright 2023.